Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Washington, D.C., early afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the large windows of the FBI lobby, illuminating the modern offices and sterile corridors. The air was thick with a subtle tension, the kind that accompanies sensitive cases, investigations into corruption and cybercrime. In this cold but prestigious setting, 38-year-old Monique Harris walked with purposeful strides. Her slender, athletic figure betrayed her years of military discipline before joining the FBI. Her neatly tied-back black hair, perfectly tailored dark suit, and visible badge around her neck conveyed an air of calm and authority. But behind her attentive, determined brown eyes burned a constant vigilance. She knew that her skin color and gender would be scrutinized more than her competence in certain circles. Monique was a cyber investigation expert, renowned for her tenacity and ability to solve the most complex cases. She was respected by her colleagues and feared by criminals. Today, she was on her way to a coordination meeting with the local police department to share information about a cybercrime network infiltrating government systems. But things weren't going to go as planned. In the corridors of the same precinct, Derek Caldwell, 42, a white police officer with an imposing build and a face etched by years of service, was preparing for his routine patrol. Caldwell had a reputation. He couldn't stand the presence of black federal agents, and his latent racism was intertwined with a sense of professional superiority. He enjoyed intimidating, belittling, and feeling in control, convinced that no higher authority would contradict him. What seemed like just another day at work was about to turn into a confrontation. Fate had decided to bring these two paths together: Monique Harris, a black FBI agent, disciplined and relentless in her work, and Derek Caldwell, a racist, impulsive, and arrogant police officer. Their worlds were about to collide. As Monique approached the meeting room, Caldwell caught sight of her. A spark of anger and contempt flashed through his eyes. He didn't yet know that he was about to meet someone who would not only refuse to be intimidated, but who would confront him with a courage and strength he had never imagined. In the silent lobby, between the surveillance cameras and the glass desks, the apparent calm masked a growing tension. The clash between the racism of a police officer and the authority of an FBI agent had just begun. The police station lobby was bustling with the comings and goings of officers and visitors. The click of heels, the rustling of files, and the hum of conversations formed a constant background noise. Monique Harris walked calmly, her files clutched to her chest, her FBI badge prominently displayed around her neck. Each step resonated with confidence. She knew exactly where she was going and why. It was then that a scathing voice interrupted his advance. "Hey you," yelled a man from the corner of the hall. "What are you doing here? This isn't your territory." Monique looked up. A large police officer, Derek Caldwell, was staring at her with a mixture of contempt and anger. His posture was aggressive, his fists slightly clenched. "Agent Harris, FBI," she replied calmly, in a firm but polite voice. "I'm here for the coordination meeting with your department." Caldwell sneered, a contemptuous grin on his face. "I don't care about your badge. You're not getting in here." Before Monique could react, Caldwell stepped forward and tried to grab her arm to pull her away. His fingers closed on her jacket, and her papers fell to the floor. The files scattered with a sharp clatter, attracting the attention of several passing police officers. Monique took a deep breath, standing straight. She showed no fear. "Take your hands off me, officer. You are committing assault," she said, her voice echoing in the hall. But Caldwell, blinded by his arrogance, wouldn't listen. He tried to drag her into a makeshift interrogation room, completely ignoring the surveillance cameras and witnesses. "I advise you to let me go immediately," ordered Monique, but her words seemed to bounce off a wall of prejudice. Then, in a flash, Monique used a move she'd learned during her years in the army. With a precise movement, she broke free, pivoted, and threw Caldwell against a metal desk. The impact knocked some files over and startled the witnesses. Caldwell, red with anger and surprise, tried to get up. "How dare you?" he yelled, furious. Monique, calm and imperturbable, looked him straight in the eyes. "I will not accept a police officer abusing their power. I am your superior in this investigation, and I will not back down from any aggression." At that moment, the police chief arrived in the lobby. The cameras and witnesses were now all focused on the scene. Caldwell, humiliated and red with shame, realized that his behavior would not go unpunished. Monique, meanwhile, gathered her files, her posture remaining dignified and resolute. The clash had just occurred, and no one in that hall would easily forget that confrontation. The hall was frozen in tense silence. The other police officers and visitors held their breath, shocked by the scene that had just unfolded. Caldwell, still furious, straightened up with difficulty, his eyes blazing with anger. He tried to regain control of the situation, unaware that his every move was now being scrutinized. "You'll regret this," he spat, advancing towards Monique with clenched fists. Monique, fully aware of her capabilities, did not back down. Her gaze was a mixture of defiance and icy calm. She knew that giving in, even for a moment, would be tantamount to allowing Caldwell to continue his intimidation. With a swift, precise movement, she dodged his charge. Caldwell lost his balance and toppled slightly to the side. It was enough for Monique to guide him into a move she had practiced hundreds of times during her years of military training, a quick pivot followed by a controlled throw. In a fraction of a second, Caldwell was slammed against a metal desk, which creaked under the impact. The stunned witnesses murmured amongst themselves. Some of the police officers looked at each other, hesitating to intervene. Monique, her hands on her hips, stood straight, as if nothing had happened. Her breathing was calm, her face impassive. Caldwell straightened up, furious and humiliated. His pride as a police officer had just taken a public blow. "You dare throw me?" he yelled, his voice trembling with rage. "Yes," Monique replied firmly. "I refuse to allow an officer to abuse his position and attack a colleague. I am a federal agent, and I am here to uphold the law, not to submit to your whims." At that moment, the police chief entered. His eyes swept the scene, an officer on the ground, an FBI agent standing, and several shocked witnesses nearby. He frowned and walked toward Caldwell. "Derek, what's going on here?" he asked, his voice authoritative. Caldwell, red-faced and embarrassed, tried to justify himself. She has. But he was cut short by an icy stare from Monique. "She is me. And what you see, Chief, is an assault by an officer from your department." The chief, accustomed to managing internal tensions, immediately grasped the gravity of the situation. The surveillance cameras had captured every movement. Several officers present also confirmed having witnessed the initial assault. Caldwell felt shame wash over him, mixed with uncontrollable anger. Monique calmly gathered her files, put them away, and adjusted her blazer, as if the situation hadn't bothered her in the slightest. Every gesture was a demonstration of control and composure. That day, in that FBI lobby, a clear message had been sent: no one, regardless of rank or status, could abuse their power against a determined and competent agent. Caldwell had just experienced this in the most humiliating way possible. The next morning, the atmosphere at the police station was still tense. The usually bustling corridors were filled with whispers and furtive glances. The incident with Caldwell had spread throughout all departments, and every officer now knew that something serious had happened. The police chief called an emergency meeting with senior officers. Monique Harris, present as both a witness and the complainant, calmly explained the events, emphasizing that the attack was unprovoked. She showed the surveillance camera footage, her files scattered on the floor, and the exact sequence of the altercation. Her voice never wavered, she had nothing to hide. The local federal prosecutor was also contacted to ensure full transparency. Caldwell, despite his desperate attempts to downplay the facts, was confronted with irrefutable evidence of his racist and aggressive behavior. The police chief then made a firm decision. "Derek Caldwell is suspended with immediate effect," he announced. "An internal investigation has been launched to determine the full implications of his conduct." Caldwell, red with anger and shame, clenched his fists. he understood that he couldn't turn the situation to his advantage. Monique, on the other hand, felt a mixture of professional satisfaction and heightened vigilance. She knew that this kind of event could attract reprisals, but she was prepared. In the days that followed, Monique focused all her energy on her investigation. The cybercrime network she had been tracking for months was complex and dangerous. She scoured databases, analyzed hundreds of logs, and contacted undercover informants. Each breakthrough in her investigation strengthened her credibility and authority, making her an indispensable figure in coordinating between the FBI and the local police. The officers in the lobby now held her in deep respect, even those who had hesitated to intervene during the altercation. The presence of a competent and unwavering black officer imposed a new order. Caldwell, standing back, observed bitterly. His arrogance and racism had been publicly exposed, and he understood that it would be difficult to regain his reputation, even after his eventual reinstatement. Monique, for her part, remained focused on what mattered most: justice. Every action she took, every piece of information she gathered, was an indirect response to the attack she had suffered. She knew that the real victory would not only be seeing Caldwell punished, but succeeding in dismantling the criminal network that threatened national security. The message was clear: in the face of injustice, courage and competence always prevail. And Monique Harris was ready to prove it, again and again. A few weeks after the incident, the internal investigation into Caldwell was nearing its end. The evidence was irrefutable. Videos, witness statements, and written reports clearly demonstrated the assault and abuse of power. Caldwell had tried to defend himself, but each attempt was thwarted by the stark reality: he had attacked FBI agent Monique Harris without any justification. The federal prosecutor summoned Caldwell for a disciplinary hearing. Monique, present as the key witness, calmly observed the scene. Her gaze was firm, but her composure betrayed a silent satisfaction. Caldwell, seated opposite her, was visibly humiliated. He could no longer hide the fear and shame that seethed within him. The prosecutor listed the facts, citing videos and witness statements. Each word hit Caldwell like a hammer: your behavior constitutes not only a breach of professional ethics, but also a violation of federal law concerning abuse of power and racial discrimination. The verdict was final: permanent suspension with loss of rank, legal proceedings, and mandatory training on ethical conduct and combating discrimination. Caldwell stood up, red with rage and humiliation, but Monique did not budge. Once the hearing was over, Monique stepped out into the lobby, greeted by her FBI colleagues and police officers who, until then, had observed cautiously. The murmurs turned to congratulations. She had not only resisted the attack, but she had also commanded respect and justice. A few days later, Monique received a final report on her criminal investigation. Thanks to her tireless work, the cybercrime network had been dismantled, and several corrupt officials had been arrested. The victory was twofold: personal justice and professional success. In the FBI lobby, Monique adjusted her blazer, badge prominently displayed, and took a deep breath. She knew her fight wasn't over. Every day she would face prejudice, threats, and challenges. But she had proven one thing: courage, competence, and integrity could triumph over hatred and violence. Caldwell, for his part, had learned the harsh lesson of his arrogance. Society and justice had spoken, and he could never again ignore the weight of his actions. Monique Harris, standing in the light of the hall, was the very image of resilience and justice: a strong, intelligent, and invincible black FBI agent, ready to defend the law and inspire all who believed in fairness and human dignity.